right, I don't know how to work this thing. Whoa! I don't think I'm... I found a selfie stick. Never mind me, I'm way too easily amused. I can't seem to get the angle right, though. Like, how am I supposed to do this? Hey, that's fun. Whoa. Yeah, this is weird. Hello, and welcome back, YouTube. So it's straight up 10:30 p.m. Tuesday, September 12th. And today is hands down the emptiest I've ever seen the lot here at Hertz, with us being busy. Now, we weren't overwhelmingly busy, but there were just no cars. I mean, the amount of people that wanted cars versus the amount of cars we had for them was rough. I mean, I'm doing everything I can. And one of the things that I did was, some of the managers aren't as familiar with what's going on with individual cars as I am, particularly electric cars. And at one point, just to get more cars available for rent, they started putting electric cars out for rent that were a little less than fully charged. And one I've been kind of holding off on bringing out was, well, that was terrible. I'm not using my selfie stick that I found today, by the way. I put it out in the car. It was like at 80 some percent, which is a point that we can put them out. Like, we'll put them out when they're at 80%. I'm gonna try and see if I can do what I did yesterday with the phone. Kind of. This is not how this mount is designed to work. I think it'll work though. I think I got this. Found a pretty cool map too. Arizona official state visitors map. I didn't unfold it. I'm eager to look at that. Anyhow, yeah, I was messing with that particular car last night. At one point, it got slow enough last night that I was actually going through the electric car chargers over at Dollar, which is the first, maybe the second time I've ever got over that direction. Usually, I just never get down to that charger bank, and yesterday I noticed there was this one Kia EV that had a decent, it's a Kia EV6, had a fairly decent charge on it, but it just would not take any additional charge. And I've seen this problem with Kia EV6 before, where something's gone wrong with it to where it won't interface with the charger, it won't take additional charge. And what ends up happening in that situation is it stays usable and drivable until the battery's dead, and then it can't go anywhere. So of course that's something we don't want going out to a renter. Well, somebody who was not familiar with that one, I had pulled it off the charger. I tried it on like 3 different chargers, ended up pulling it off the charger, and I never did anything with last night because I wanted to talk to somebody about it, and it kind of turned out there was really nobody for me to talk to about it. I ended up going home and kind of forgetting about it. Well, I saw it today on a charger, and same sort of thing. Like, the battery percentage hadn't gone up any, but it was sitting with the charger plugged into it, and the car was showing that there was a charging error, and the charger was showing that there was a charging error. So I hate this right left arrow. I absolutely hate it. And I went ahead and took it off the charger. And at that point I was busy. Like, when I'm one guy by myself and I'm doing all the maintenance cars and I'm doing all the electric cars, and Now, to be fair, I wasn't doing all the electric cars. There were other people helping me with electric stuff, but I was the only one who was like really focused on them. And then I'm also doing up downs. I'm not the kind of person that if I know how to do different stuff and there's work available to do, where I just stop and sit around and look at the other work and go, oh, well, that's I'm not an up down driver, I'm a maintenance driver, and ignore it. Like, I can move that car as much as anybody else. If I went over and I'm looking for maintenance cars in an area and there are none, and there are no electric cars, if there's an up down movement to be done, I'll go ahead and do it. So I can keep moving. There's no point in me standing in one area where there's nothing going on. If I can move a car, I mean, ultimately, that's what they pay me for, is to move cars. So, also something I found out, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. I think I was going to talk about it a few days ago, and then I got sidetracked on something else. So come to find out, the majority of the up-down drivers are not allowed to move cars beyond a certain value, or cars that are considered extra valuable, high-end cars, sports car, you know, the fancy sports cars, what have you. Wow, that plane was like right over my head. And that never really occurred to me. In fact, it was kind of funny that we had a safety circle, whatever you want to call it, where everybody went over and did a little test and read over the safety rules. And one that caught my eyes was that you're not able to move cars over a certain value. And I don't remember what the value was, but it seemed like there was, or maybe it was more a description of the type of cars. But anyway, it said until you had been there for, I want to say it said 30 days or something. And when I looked at it, I'm like, wow, because I can't remember if it was my second day or my third day, but I know I drove a Tesla from, like, off-site, from a body shop back to Hertz. I did have a more experienced driver ride with me, Andre rode with me, but yeah, I drove it. I'm like, wow, it's like I've been moving high dollar cars since day one. This apparently doesn't apply to me, but yeah, I guess that is a policy, and I didn't even realize that it was enforced until a few days back. There were no vehicles for me to drive upstairs. That was close. And the car behind me ran it too. Good times. Yeah, there was nobody. There were no vehicles for me to drive up, but I knew I still had some maintenance cars upstairs, and so I flagged down one of the shift leaders who was driving a van with a crew in it, and just told him that I needed a ride up to the dollar maintenance line. I had cars up there, which, I mean, they'll always give me a ride. It's not a problem. I can get a ride with anybody. Shoot, I got a ride the other day a couple of times with one of the car washers, which was, they're pretty cool. I don't spend a lot of time talking to those guys, and this guy I actually had a pretty good conversation with since it was slow, and he had absolutely nothing better to do than give me a ride over to the dollar maintenance side. But anyway, we're driving up, and one of the Hertz Special Edition Shelby Mustangs was in the Hertz returns, and the lead was asking somebody if she could drive the van so he could drive that. I was like, well, I can drive that. He goes, oh no, only leads are allowed to drive those. And I'm like, yeah, I drive those all the time. I said, it's apparently maintenance is allowed as well. And I know the other maintenance guys drive them as well. But he's like, well, I'm not sure about that. I was just like, okay, I'm pretty sure about that. I've driven much more expensive cars than that. I moved a Maserati twice a couple of days ago. And he's like, well, okay. He's like, that's between you and Rob. I'm like, yeah, pretty much it is. So anyway, there are times when I walk up and if there's gas cars that need to be moved, and I realize there's something that probably they don't want the regular up and down crew drivers driving. I'm like, I'll grab it. It's not like I'm trying to gravitate towards expensive cars, just I know they're comfortable with me moving it. And a lot of that stems from the fact that some of these guys that are driving, they're really young, and they get behind the wheel of something that's a muscle car, or super fancy car, and they feel the need to drive like crazy. And I move those kind of cars just like everything else at about 24 miles per hour. So wow, those lights on the other side are not a good sign. It did storm in the valley in some places today. We didn't really get it at the rental car center. Like, we got a little bit of rain, and the wind got a little hectic for a hot minute, and then it just went past us. So, but Priscilla did text me and say that it was really bad by her place. She was hearing sirens and thunder and stuff. So, hopefully there's not a bunch of downed trees in my neighborhood. So anyway, yeah, today was pretty dead, but yeah, I managed to catch that. Last thing I did, I managed to catch that EV6 because sure enough, somebody had moved that from where I placed it, where I was going to move it into a maintenance line. Like, I figured that was the least important thing for me to move at the time because I had other stuff I was working on. Just because any time something like that goes wrong, our shop's not equipped to fix that. We do mechanic work. That's an electrical engineer's job. That has to go back to Kia, and at some point Kia's got to pick it up from us. So those vend outs, sometimes they take a while. But yeah, I did discuss it. At one point I saw one of the managers that I know is like a mid-level manager down there, and he knows what I do. Most of the higher up people at Hertz realize I'm not, even though I'm wearing the same safety vest as a regular MLS driver, they know I'm not that. I'm Daniel, the night maintenance guy. And it's the hat. I'm sure they all gray beard, hat, that guy. Yeah, they I told him, it's like, yeah, there's no rush on that, but yeah, I'll get that. Well, apparently somebody who didn't get the memo put it up in dollar as one of the luxury vehicles for dollar available to rent. And fortunately, I caught that before somebody left with it, because yeah, the battery was saying 88%. I don't even think I drove the thing 50 yards and it dropped right down to 83%. Something definitely wrong with it, and I did take it down just to make sure it was the car I thought it was, and it was. And plug it on a charger, and immediately it was. Charger was throwing an error, and the car was throwing an error. So yeah, it definitely doesn't need to go out with a renter, because I get the feeling if somebody was to take that out, yeah, they could drive it until the battery dies. But I don't think the battery's going to give them what it's estimating it's going to give them, because I think the thing's estimated like 220 miles of driving on it. Which is more driving than most renters do in those cars. Generally speaking, people only rent the electric vehicles if they know they're going to be staying local here in Phoenix. But yeah, it didn't. And the night managers that work over the main Hertz car wash side agree with me when I told them what was going on with that. They're like, yeah, if you can get that out of here and get that marked, that would be great. And speaking of getting things marked, so I had a Tesla that I was going to put out. It was washed, the battery was fully charged, and it was in the cleans, ready to be put out. Had a ticket and everything, as if everything was 100% fine on it. And one thing that I always do with the Tesla is, just because I'm so sensitive to blowing air on me and to I'm sure it's to do with me kind of being on the spectrum, but I found that it's not just the air, it's the sound of the air rushing through the vents. Like, that also puts me on edge. But yeah, the first thing I do when I get in a Tesla, if it just starts blowing on me as I bring up the controls, the climate controls, and I adjust the vents so they're not blowing directly in my face. I take the fan down to 3, which is a point where it's moving the air, but it's not so loud that it rattles me. And it's also a good test to make sure that the screen is working, because a lot of times those screens, those touch screens, which controls everything on a Tesla Model 3, also on a Tesla Model Y. I moved one of those today. I honestly thought it was a Tesla Model 3 until I looked at the floorboard and saw it said Model Y on it. The similarities between those are great. I mean, unless you're the one just looks just a wee bit bigger, but other than that, it looks like the same car. It just looks like a variation on the same model, but generally moving lots and lots of Model 3s. But yeah, it's not unusual for the screens to go wonky, and I'll catch it and other people won't, because I always do that, and I always turn the radio on because I gotta have my music. And as I'm adjusting the seat belt and adjusting the seat, so I'm sitting comfortably and reaching the pedals, without any issue. And I saw something on the screen I'd never seen before. It wouldn't let me direct any of the air, and it's hard to explain if you've never used a Tesla before. It was something that little Anthony showed me the first day he was showing me how to do stuff in the Teslas. Now, I'd seen the animations affect the video that I did that's getting I think it's got a whopping 15 views about why I don't like the Tesla Model 3. It has, that was actually the day I figured out how to turn the blower down. And I had commented about, oh, look, we've got an animation of blowing air. How about instead we just have a knob where I can turn this, so I can just turn it off on a knob and don't have to fuck with layered menus. But what I didn't realize, that animation of air on the touch screen, you drag your finger on it to control the vents. It doesn't have normal AC vents like where you touch the vent and you just move it with your hand. It's all servo controlled. Well, anyway, I went to move that like I normally do, and then it had an error message on the image of the touchscreen. I forget exactly what it said, but it was something about climate controls unavailable due to system failure. I'm like, ooh. And that one was set to go up and go to a renter. And I got a feeling that the average driver that puts them out would not have noticed that. Doesn't do the little extra steps that I always do to see that. And since I saw that, I immediately just took it. I'm like, yeah, it's still hot as hell in the daytime. Like, nobody, whoever gets this car, somebody rents this car, they're going to be miserable not being able to control the climate controls, anything beyond just the temperature and the fan speed. And so I think all the vents were actually closed. I don't think any of the vents were open, so like you could hear the air blowing, but it wasn't coming out. And when I've discovered other things, particularly with Teslas, with the screens being wonky and whatnot, and they're not marked, just to make sure that they actually get there, rather than just putting a colored hat on it and putting it in a maintenance line. Because I know if they're not in the system, if they're not marked as, if they're in the system as okay to rent, and they're not marked on the window, then it's just highly likely somebody's going to see that and go, I don't know why that's here, and put it in the dirty line. It'll get washed, it'll get put out to rent. With a touchscreen that doesn't work, or in this case, the first time I've had this issue happen, a climate control system that's not working. And anyway, I went in and whenever that happens, I always go in and I talk to the and I wish I knew his name. He's an older guy. Oh, he looks like he's probably about a decade older than me. And really nice guy, really attention to detail. And I know I've mentioned him in my vlog before. He's the one that I mentioned right when I first started working at MLS, that was getting frustrated with the way the Teslas will have a default seat position, and you can set the settings to where it just always goes to that position as soon as you start the car. And then somebody had set the default seat position to be all the way on the floor and all the way leaned back like a bed. So when he was trying to mess with the car, it just kept laying down. He couldn't figure out how to get the damn seat to stay up and was just getting so frustrated with it. I'm like, damn, I've had a move on me by themselves before, but not that bad. That's nuts. But yeah, him and I have had good rapport since then. And anyway, today, I almost feel like this is sort of a badge of honor, but today, he gave me my own paint pen. So, he's like, yeah, it's like, you pay attention to the cars, you know what's going on. Just, put the date and a description of what's wrong. And he goes, I think that'll help a lot, you having one of these, rather than having to come in here and let us know what's going on. It's like, I appreciate you. So that was nice. And I told a couple of the Hertz managers that, are further out, like actually on the lot and around the car wash. It's like, oh yeah, the shop manager gave me this today, and they were giving me a thumbs up. They're like, that's nice. So anyway, it's not exactly a promotion. It's just a paint pen, but considering like how I got it and where it came from, I feeling really proud of myself for that. Anyway, I thought I was seeing that with Priscilla, but I haven't heard back from her in a while. And it's Tuesday night. I love getting my sing on here at the Dirty Drummer. So I think I'm going to do that. Thanks for coming with me on the ride.